So, solo aging is our number one topic. It's across the board. If we do a discussion on solo aging, we get more people tuning in than any of our other discussions. Doesn't mean that our other discussions aren't important. It just means that there's more of a broad interest in the topic of solo aging. And solo aging, as you all are going to learn, if you haven't figured it out, it affects every one of us. And I'm real excited to bring Carol Marak to the stage. Um, I stumbled into Carol when I saw how important this topic was. I did a web search and I found this woman, Carol Marak, who is running Facebook groups and all kinds of things on the topic of solo aging. And we did a discussion and it was a hit. And then I said, Carol, why don't you co host these discussions with me on solo aging? And it's been great because she is an authentic voice in this area. Her journey is and story is great. And I love authenticity on our discussions. And so today, Carol is not co-hosting; she is the guest because her book that she's been working on for quite some time is finally published, and so we're going to use the book as our guide for the discussion today. So, Carol, welcome and congrats on your book being published. I see the poster there in the background. For those folks that have never tuned into a discussion where you've been involved, give us a brief snapshot of your background and what led you to this topic of solo aging.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for having me today and allowing me to showcase my book, which was a ordeal in itself. And welcome participants and attendees. I appreciate you all joining us. This is a very significant topic, as Steve pointed out, living alone and planning for the future. I've lived alone for many years. However, what really brought me to this point was I was a family caregiver, and that's what started the whole ordeal with this whole topic of living alone and aging alone. So after my experience with mom and dad and helping them through all the processes of elder care, and it was very burdensome for myself and my three sisters who helped us out, who helped our parents. However, growing older, I really had firsthand experience of seeing how hard it is to get older. So after both of them died, I realized, oh my gosh, that was a lot of work. And then it occurred to me, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't have children. I don't have three living daughters that my parents had. And so I thought, what am I going to do? I'm alone. I don't have a partner, nor a spouse or children. And so that's when, it was definitely a wake-up call for me, and it really hit me hard. And and I'll talk with other people that are in my predicament or in my circumstance, and it's like, oh yeah, we're fine. And it's like, really? How can you say that? It terrified me, thinking, how am I going to go through all of what mom and dad went through without having someone looking out for me? So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
What a great story. And again, we're all different. We all have
Yeah.
different personality types and how we approach crisis and planning and what have you. But the thing that I like is that it, as an entrepreneur, I'm always looking at that you plan for the best, but you prepare for the worst. And it sounds like you have a
Yes.
little bit of that mindset as well. And because you have that mindset, that's why you wrote the book. That's why you created the group. And by helping yourself, you're also helping other people. It, I I I admire everything that you're doing, especially since what was your profession as you were working? What was your profession?
Sure. I was a sales manager at a high-tech firm. And I've
And
been in technology for, oh, 30 years.
I don't like the term. I like to refer to it as graduation, not, but you are retired from that career, correct?
Oh, yeah, since my dad died,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
2007, 8, something.
So the cool thing is being a book author and organizing these groups and doing these things for the first time in your life, you are becoming an entrepreneur over at they say the fastest group of entrepreneurs are people over 50.
That's true. And,
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many providers for senior care come out of the experience of giving, family caregiving.
exactly. No, is seeing what could be done better and then doing it
Yes,
yourself. So,
absolutely.
okay. So I noticed that there was a few comments on the previous discussions we've had on solo aging, which I threw into the chat. But here you can see our last one. Wasn't that a great one with Joy Laverty, the
Yes,
author of Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? We've
she's
done a
fabulous.
panel presentation. We did one on the legal implications of solo aging, which was really good. And this was our first one back in, I think, November, where Carol and I met. But Carol, I'm trying to get to your slides that you shared with me. I love this format, and we did it with Joy for book authors. Is that it gives us a glimpse at what's in your book, but it also gives us some talking points on this topic. And so, what Carol's going to do is sort of make some comments on the chapters of her book. Feel free to jump in and ask questions or make comments. Margie, we see your question. We're going to jump on that one here shortly. But Carol, if you want to kind of kick things off with give us an overview of your book and jump
Sure.
into some of these chapters.
Sure. I have to say, when I first started writing this book back in 2016, this is totally different than what it was in the very beginning stages of it. Because even as a family caregiver, there was always something that bugged me about elder care. And it was always, why isn't there an assessment telling me what my parents need? Why can't I know exactly where my parents are right now in terms of their health and all the other top concerns? And then kind of guide me through, as a family caregiver, that would guide me into how to better take care of my parents, kind of a proactive plan for my parents, and that was always in the back of my mind. So several years ago, I threw out my first book and I said, okay, I'm going to do my assessment, forget it. Because I think this is critical, not only for people who live alone like me, but for people who are married, for adults who are even the widows, for family caregivers, anyone that's looking ahead and thinking about some of the issues that we all deal with. And there's another slide, Steve. You don't have to go through it, or you can very quickly, and then we'll come back to this slide if that's okay. Very good. Yeah, stop right. That's great. Okay, so these are the top aging concerns that I helped my parents with, or my sisters and I did. And so when we all started dealing with this, I thought, why can't I figure out how best to approach these top concerns? So we can now go back. So that's what the book is about. It's about addressing those top 10 concerns. But in the first part of the book, which is called Smart Planning, that's the first chapter. And I also want to preface the overview here with, this is a very simple book. I was rereading it last night thinking, I just want to refresh myself. Even though I wrote it, I just want to kind of reread this. And I thought, wow, this is really simple, because we think it's complicated. And elder care, believe me, growing older and especially living alone is complicated. However, I think there are strategies we can apply that keeps it simple. Because you don't have to be what do they call it, a rocket science to figure this out. I really don't. I believe that. I believe that we all are empowered ourselves. We know who we are, just like Steve mentioned a moment ago. We individuals know ourselves well enough to figure out what's working, what are our strengths, and what our weaknesses. I think we already know that. So this tool, this book is really a tool to help guide you once you discover those weaknesses, and really turn them and flip them into strengths, because I believe they can be. Uh, I'm a very good example of it. I'm not trying to, make myself, above everyone here. However, I really believe that we all are smart enough to figure this out. And so the book is very simple, Steve. That's the point.
Well, so what's interesting about our solo aging discussions is they oftentimes take a different theme. And if you look back at, I think the one we did 2 times ago, the theme was making friends, and many of the people on the discussion brought up that they had not made friends in many years, and then like a spouse died, or their friends were passing away, and now they had to sort of make friends for the first time. And that's an example of identifying a weakness. It's sort of like, wow, I haven't practiced this, so
Exactly.
acknowledge it, and then where can I go to get some assistance with this? And anyways, okay, so we've
Yeah.
got the
Yeah,
plan.
so
Yeah.
the point that I wanted to make, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Steve, but smart planning, the thing I want you folks to understand, and I love this quote by Albert Einstein. He says, we can't solve problems from the position from where they were created, right? I mean, we have to start thinking outside the box. And so this book really does help you, to do that, basically.
I love it. All right. So should we move to chapter 2, Smart Reliance?
Yes, yes. Smart Reliance really is about self-advocacy. We have to build a strong advocate, being our own advocate. And so I give you some strategies in creating that. And the first one is really to become your own best friend. And then to build your family of choice is another way to build more self-reliance. And then learning how to just accept yourself for who you are, where you are, and to knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, basically.
Well, this is a good one, and I was holding off on Margie's question/comment to make it relevant with your discussion, and you hit the nail on the head. So Margie says, I've recently become an empty nester. This is a slightly different scenario. I'd like hints for adjusting. I have a full life outside of my child, but it's difficult to transition for me nonetheless. It's, yeah, thoughts on that in this, that's right on the nose of self-reliance and reinventing yourself now that your sort of circle with your child leaving the home has changed.
Oh, okay. So what I'm understanding is Margie is saying that she does have a strong outside support system.
She has a full life outside of her child, but now that her child has gone, she's having difficulty adjusting. And this could be, you could insert empty nest and child leaving, a
Oh, I
spouse
got it.
passing away, a
Yes.
best friend passing away. No matter how full our lives are, if somebody is that embedded in our network and they're no longer there, um, figuring out how to reinvent yourself in that new scenario.
Yes. Well, isn't it wonderful that it's Margie, right? That you're getting that. I mean, you understand it, you're feeling it right now. And I think all of us go through that, no matter if we are a widow or if we're a single person, because our environment is constantly changing. Even if as a solo person, even if you spent the last 20 years like me alone, I still have changes made in my own support system. Maybe my friends move, they perhaps maybe even die, unfortunately. We lose loved ones all the time, whatever the circumstances. So the point is, you're really feeling it right now, and that's great. So there are so many different ways that you can start reaching out and building even stronger, more of a stronger community just right where you are.
Yeah, no, and it was amazing all the suggestions that came out when we talked about building that network and community in one of our last discussions. But
Yeah.
the thing you touched on is, again, it's another common theme on this solo aging thread. And I you just used some words, I forgot what they were, but the essence is that uh like right now my wife and I are together and we're healthy and we're living, and I feel like I've got this sort of fairy tale picture that it's going to be this way till we're both going to sort of you know walk into the grave on the same day at the same hour. And that almost never happens. Is that no matter what the scenario, there is, and no matter how big your family is and how great your marriage is, there is a good chance that you're going to be a solo ager, or you're going to be alone at some point. And that's where the solo aging topic is relevant to everybody.
Absolutely. Yes, because you never know when life will turn, right?
Right.
You just
So,
never know.
and that kind of leads into the roadmap, I guess, is that, so what can we do to prepare? Or, and I guess we shouldn't even call it prepare. It's like none of us have a crystal ball, but if you don't think about it, um it's going to be a big, there's potential for crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. And the chapter 3 is really giving an overview of why you need a roadmap. And it gives the reader an understanding of, because we need to know where we are right now in order to make improvements and to rectify the imbalances and to get where we want to be. Because if we don't understand where we are, how in the world, or yeah, where you are, how in the world are you ever going to make changes? You, you can't. You've got to truly understand where you are, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and then play on those strengths. And then to figure out, well, how am I going to get from this point to, say 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now? And that's the essence of it, because I really want people to start thinking of, well, here's where I am right now. And in 3, 5, 10 years from now, I would like to be potentially here, here, and here. But you can't move forward until you know the obstacles of that's keeping you right where you are. And I
Man.
think Margie is a great example of that, is because she's seeing that she is now alone.
Yeah.
And now that, Margie, now that you have this void in your life, you can start looking at, and believe me, this isn't going to happen overnight. So don't put pressure on yourself, for heaven's sakes. Just start thinking. I love the idea. When I was in therapy years and years ago, my therapist said, Carol, healing and moving forward is very much like a cut on your finger. One day you cut it and it's bleeding, and then it goes by a week or two later and you look at it and you think, my, it's healed. He said, just having an awareness of where you are right now, it will get you 50% of the way there.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. And I agree. Like Margie, who did a little follow-up, she says she's a recovering therapist and understands the dynamics, but I still miss my kid. We see each other a lot, but she and our dog aren't staying in the house anymore, which is, and she says, I've always enjoyed living alone, but now that I've lived with her, it's different. And, I tell you what, like I almost teared up there when I read that. What a touching statement about the relationship for you and your daughter, but also just the fact that you're sort of able to express the way that you feel in a venue like this to me and Carol, who are basically strangers in the audience. Hats off to you, and hats off to anybody who just tuned into this discussion on solo aging, who's thinking about it. The real people that we need to reach are the ones that have their head in the sand and aren't brave enough to express themselves and begin to think about, how can I live a purposeful, happy life in my new situation? So thank you, Margie. Let's see. Oh, this is another really touching comment here, and we're going to work our way through all these chapters, but I know, Carol, you love hearing from the audience. So Anne Marie says, gray divorce, which is another term like solo aging, while caregiving full-time elder care mom, while grieving the death of my dad, after caregiving a sad and suffering ending, while ongoing assistance with a sibling in a group home with intellectual disability, while keeping in touch with young adults, while trying to look after yourself, last on the list. And so again, Anne Marie, I know everybody in this community's heart goes out to you, and I hope that we can all be a resource to you. Number one, thanks for sharing that, because it emphasizes how much more can be going on in somebody's life. And also the term gray divorce, how synonymous that is with solo aging. Carol, your thoughts?
Absolutely. Even though I may have been, or people in my circumstance, or single adults may be single longer, Anne Marie, we still have gone through and still go through some of the same feelings that you have, because even though a spouse it's different, losing a spouse or losing a child, or children moving out of the home, we still go through our losses as well. And and I think once you acknowledge that, there is something you learn from what you've learned through being married or being divorced, that you can carry with you to create a much fuller life. I know a lot of single people in my circumstance that are living a much different life, even after a marriage or a widowhood, or being an empty nester, because there are ways that you can take what you've learned and share it with others and create such a wonderful opportunity for yourself.
Let's see. Jackie said, would you please show the slide again that has the life domains in a constellation? And let me see if I can increase the size of this for folks. Carol, do you want to share with us?
Sure. Yeah, because we're going to start talking about the assessment anyway.
Right? Let me see where that is on our list. That's the next one. Okay, so great. Okay, perfect timing then.
Okay, well, here we go. Truly, this is what the book is about. It's about assessing where you are right now in all of these top 10 domains. And when I did this for myself about 8, 9 years ago, my money was horrible, was in a horrible situation. It really, truly was I had the least confidence about my money. And because I did, over the years, it is now maybe number 2 at the top of my list. And what's phenomenal about knowing where you are right now and how you fall or where you fall in these top 10 domains. And what I mean by that is, initially when you start the assessment, it's not important that you really get a full assessment of where you are. What you're trying to do is learn what is my least satisfying domain. Where do I have my most weaknesses? And for me, that was money. So just knowing your top one, that's where you start the work. That's where you start putting a lot more effort into rectifying it and making it better. Okay. So, but you'll have an opportunity through this Living Well assessment to do all 10. But sometimes we get overwhelmed with thinking, oh my gosh, how am I have to look at all 10. Just do the assessment. It'll give you a quick overview. There's actually 25 questions per domain. So you can easily do that within maybe an hour or two max. And then you'll have a good idea of where you're falling short. And then you can take that one top concern and start working on it. And in chapter 5, then I'll talk about that. But is there any other questions around that? I hope I hit it.
Well. Yeah, let me keep that up on the screen and let me read a few of these comments because they're really good. Well, actually, let me address a couple here. Well, first, I think we did when I put up the legal and financial implications of solo aging. Eric said, "I hate trusts." So, and that kind of stems into Carolyn Rourke's question, and maybe there's somebody in the audience who can provide some feedback. Thank you for this great topic today. What suggestions do you have for arranging for legal issues like executor for your estate, power of attorney, medical POA? We did that discussion on the legal implications of solo aging. I'll make sure to drop that into the chat because we did talk about some of those things. But Carol, any words of wisdom on those legal and financial documents that a lot of times a family with kids, it's the oldest daughter is the person that takes care of all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, when you're thinking about your finances or the legal matters, I hire a professional to help you with this. And then, of course, as you do with everything else before you hire someone, is to get recommendations from your support team, your family, your friends, or whomever you are close to. Because we all face, especially if you're living alone, for example, I have chosen not to have one of my sisters to be my healthcare proxy, only because I really am afraid she wouldn't follow my wishes. She would follow her own wishes in terms of holding on to me. So, take your time. However, you do need to have someone who you can trust. I think that's the primary selection of a healthcare proxy is it could be a very close friend. It could be a niece perhaps or a nephew, but make sure you trust that individual wholeheartedly. And by all means, have a conversation with them about your wishes prior to selecting someone, because it's a huge responsibility, not only for that person who's your agent, who's signing up to take on that responsibility. So you want to make sure that they live close enough and that they are able and maybe capable of making good decisions for you. And then if they are, make sure they truly understand what your wishes are. So the highest, I think the highest priority in that area would be someone who's trustworthy. And again, that always leads to building a strong support system. And you just have to start. You have to start reaching out to people who live nearby you that you trust. And because it takes time. How do you know if you can trust someone unless you spend a lot of time together, unless you see how they live their lives and how they're making decisions about themselves, about their finances and their health? Are they taking good care of themselves? There's so much that goes on that goes into making wise decisions. So that's why I encourage people to start now while you're still healthy, so that you can build a strong system of people who are reliable, trustworthy, and who are really capable people.
Yeah, great advice. And so now we got a few questions, and probably more than a few, but the ones that I'm looking on the screen right now are related to making friends, which again is a challenging topic. But again, the fact that people are willing to sort of say, hey, this is something difficult. So Eric says he has Asperger's and making friends is difficult for him. I mean, making friends can be difficult for everyone, but if you've got I don't know the proper way to describe it, but if you've got some circumstances that make it even more difficult, that can be challenging. Arlene, I'm going to sort of couple that with Arlene's comment that says, I'd always had a variety of friends in all ages. Now I find the older ones have gone to independent and assisted. Thus, I have fewer friends. And with COVID, limited being able to find new friends. One child is estranged and living in Germany. The other has his own life. And so I feel like I might be a burden on him. But I swear that one discussion, we talked for an hour on this topic, it felt like. And I think for both Eric and Arlene, one of the things that I gained out of that was, make a list of the things that you're interested in. Okay. And it's amazing now with the explosion of online groups, how much is out there. I'm also going to I'm going to stop sharing my screen here briefly so that I can do a quick search, because we did a great discussion on this platform called Senior Planet. And Arlene, the woman that we feature on this discussion was just like you. She moved to this area. She had no friends. She was stuck in the house with COVID. And she joined the classes on Senior Planet. And she said, now I have friends all over the country. And in fact, because I'm talking to you, they're going to wonder why I wasn't in my online yoga class. So Carol, any thoughts for Eric and Arlene on the friend thing?
Well, Eric, I know Eric. Hi, Eric. Eric is a member of my group, and that's something Eric and I have talked about to some extent. However, just to say, I have a dear friend where I live in my building, and there's a whole story to my building, but who has Asperger's also, and he's a delightful person. And we just try not to put yourself what's too much pressure on yourself. There's not a certain way that we all have to perform, and try not to label yourself. Don't see yourself as someone with Asperger's. See yourself as someone who's different, and look at at your strengths. I mean, what can you bring to a friendship? That's what I would do if I were you. Just really list out your strengths and what that means to you.
But one thing I was doing this to help a family member is that the National Association of Mental Health, NAMI, has a ton of support groups, and I was blown away at how, like, for example, and I'm assuming that there is some online connections with people with Asperger's, have this thing in common, connecting and talking about the solutions that they all use to, get outside the box and make friends and things like that. And in the meantime, you've made a bunch of friends that have a similar condition and are going through a similar issues that you're going through. I don't like to call these challenges or problems,
Right,
because we've
right.
all got, it's just, we're all unique and different,
Absolutely. And that's something, Eric, you might want to check into our support groups. And just like Steve said, that's where you'll find like-minded people. And you can learn from one another. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to segregate yourself. I'm just saying you learn from one another.
Oh, here's a good one from Audrey Carol. She says, I'm stuck trying to decide between aging in my single family home versus an independent retirement community. I work with older adults. I'm in my 60s, and so many are adamant about staying home, but I'm already feeling isolated. What am I missing? Man, Audrey, we're gonna tackle this topic next month
Good,
on to
good.
move or not to move. But one thing we all have to remember is we need to beat to our own drum. Just because the statistics say aging in place and staying in your home is the place to be, if you're feeling lonely and isolated, it might not be the best place for you. And
Absolutely.
but there are a lot of different options. But do you tackle? I think that's on one of your um, one of the elements there is housing and location.
Right, exactly. That's right. Well, I was in the same situation that you are in, and I forget who is the person that's asking that question?
Audrey.
Audrey. Yeah. So I was living. It's a little bit different. If you can afford moving to a life plan community, which would be from independent to assisted to a skilled nursing care, those are really wonderful. However, they're expensive, and I'm sure you know that. So what I did was the next best thing. I was in a single family residence living in the suburbs, and I had to drive everywhere. I couldn't walk any of my errands. There was nothing around in terms of shopping, or my medical healthcare system was not around me. If I wanted to visit friends and have lunch, it was, oh my gosh, I had to drive. So I started thinking, how can I make improvements where I live that would not only make me feel more comfortable in that environment, but would also potentially help my health, help my building more social connections and creating more support right where I live. So it took 7 years. However, I moved from that single family residence and I moved into a high rise. And it's a intergenerational high rise. We have some young children, few, but some, to mostly 40 to 50-year-olds. However, we do have 80 and 90-year-old residents that live where I live. So it's almost like a life plan community. However, we don't have hired help, right? It's really just a 55 plus community. And so I bought a small condo, I downsized, and I'm very happy where I'm at. So there are, when we think about aging in place, we don't, and I also want to say, potentially, but this is totally up to individuals. I realize that you could create, or people could, depending on their neighborhood, could create a very supportive environment right where you live in a single family residence in the suburbs. There are ways that you can do it. It's just going to take a lot of effort and thinking outside the box. But I chose to do what you're thinking about doing, Aubrey, and that is to move to a high rise. So it's really helped me feel much more confident in being older alone.
Actually, some of you on this call don't realize I'm 56 right now. When I was 43, I moved in and I lived in 5 different senior living communities temporarily as a resident. And when I would leave those little immersion projects to go back to my suburban home, even though I was with my family, I felt kind of lonely because the value a of a densely populated high rise or multifamily housing is that you always see people. There's somebody saying hi. There's somebody checking in. It's easier to make friends because you bump into people in the hallway.
Right.
So there's some things there. Let me share my screen because there was a few folks. I brought up the Senior Planet and making friends on Senior Planet. If you're not familiar with it, seniorplanet.org. There are several people in chat. One person said, I got to pull my chat up again, that she takes 5 classes a week on Senior Planet. And another person said that they do that as well. And as you can see, it's just a robust platform with lots of really interesting things. But the way that they set it up is that you actually can connect with the other people in the class and make these friends. There was a comment I wanted to address here. Carol says, my life involves eating only whole plant foods. There are no retirement communities that address that need. Now, Carol, there probably isn't a community that is only whole plant. However, I'm willing to bet that there are people out there that live in communities that embrace the whole plant lifestyle. And so when I'm guiding people through this decision on where to live and what to do, and I get a challenge like that, what I always tell them to do is like make a list of all the things that are important. And when you call these communities to get the tour, say, look, I really don't even want to come over there to tour unless you can introduce me to another resident that is embracing a whole plant lifestyle. And they're oftentimes surprised. You could insert whole plant lifestyle with somebody who's interested in theater, somebody that collects Beanie Babies, you name it. So use that. I don't know if it'll be a tip, but hey, Carol, I could see you potentially teaming up with a bunch of people and developing a community that embraces that lifestyle. Wouldn't that be awesome and cool? Okay. Carol, I want to get back to the remaining chapters of your book here. And let me share again. And then I'm going to keep on monitoring chat. And this has been really fun. Okay, so where are we now? Actions?
Okay, yes. So the next part of the book is about smart actions. And here I'm giving you tips on how to rectify some of the issues. Let's say, for example, with my money issue, yours perhaps could be either health issues, it could be diet and nutrition, it could be exercise, whichever domain that falls or you're least satisfied with. Smart actions in chapter 5, I give you ways that you can start rectifying them. And I give you so many resources. It's just really incredible. I have volumes of resources here and the different ways of looking at how, for example, let's say you're looking at your health. Many times we think, well, how in the world do you assess your health? Well, first of all, you need the help of your healthcare team, right? You can't do that by yourself. So that's where I started with my doctor and a dietitian. And together, the 3 of us looked at my family medical history is the top place to start. And in Smart Actions, I have listed a variety of resources for how to navigate your family medical history and how to learn about it. And this isn't stuff that I made up. It's actually online. The most of them are .gov sites, the CDC, the National Institute of Health, really have some great resources for us to figure out how to assess our health, but our family medical history. But once you know, that really is a very, and I don't think a lot of us are aware of it. We have got to know what our family medical history, because many times it's genetics that play into some of the chronic illnesses that we could develop over the years. So that's an example of some of the smart actions to take. And I address all the smart actions for all top 10 domains.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Well, I think we can go to smart resources, and then the remainder of our time, we can kind of open it up for discussion.
Yeah, and you know, when you are taking this assessment, if you do take it, the smart, well, the assessment itself, those 25 questions per domain, is going to give you ideas of how to start thinking about each domain. And what I love about those questions is you can take each individual question and kind of turn them into your own research. Let's say, for example, someone was trying to increase their social connections. And I wish I had that open, but one of the questions that I ask is, do you surround yourself with people who reciprocate, who are giving people, who give back to what, have a reciprocal type of interaction? So when I ask that question in the book, you can take that question and then start researching on that particular question. If you think, well, how can I build a more supportive friendship that's kind of a give and take relationship? We'll just start researching how to build a friendship of reciprocity, or how to build a give and take friendship. And you're going to come up with some really great ideas. So this is how I always kind of make decisions. I really think through, and this is a topic that I think, Steve, it's so critical. It is critical thinking. So it's a way of thinking. We talked about that in the last webinar with Joy Laverty. We talked about developing critical thinking skills, and that's exactly what this book will help you start doing, because you're thinking outside the box. You're looking at your weaknesses and you're thinking, well, I wonder what are some of the obstacles I'm having to my diet and nutrition. And even, was it Carol that eats plant-based foods? Is that right? I think it was, and I apologize if I got that wrong. But so here's an interesting task for you to do, Carol, because I'm mostly, I used to be 100%, but I'm mostly plant-based. Do research on how to convince people to eat more plant-based, how to convince my friends to eat more plant-based foods. Now that would be an interesting research project. And I bet you're going to get a lot of feedback from the web telling you how to get your friends more involved, or get wherever you live, your environment more involved in eating plant-based foods. I mean, think about it.
Yeah, she's actually converted 3 people on this discussion using chat.
See, there you go. Wow, I love it. I love it. That's great.
This is great. Okay, let's, I just glanced over here, and let's see okay. I did throw in there, ironically, it's like these solo aging topics, actually, the topic of elder abuse came up, and several people were like, we would love to have that as a topic. But, that's One thing that I noticed in what brought up this topic of solo aging is that people were proudly saying, I'm a solo ager. And but one of the reasons that you want to be proud in that situation is a single older person can be susceptible to a lot of potential elder abuse. And so we need to be proud, we need to plan, we need to protect ourselves. So we're going to work on getting that elder abuse topic going.
Yes, especially in all segments, even finances. That is so critical. And
Yep.
people have got to learn to use technology. It's-
No, I mean, and I'll tell you, Senior Planet and Get Set Up, those are two great places to go if you feel like you're not as comfortable with technology as you'd like to be. Those are two platforms that do some great training and immersion for older adults learning technology.
Well, and
So,
also at the same time, stay cyber safe.
yeah, yeah, that's not easy to do for any of us.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Okay, well, of course, I look at the clock and we are almost to the top of the hour. So I want to sort of throw out there, Carol, to get your closing thoughts together. And I want to start thanking the audience again for just making my day with these wonderful questions, comments, feedback. I mean, I just get energized with these conversations because I feel like I'm in a community of people that really are trying to make a difference in their lives and other people's lives. And really, you remember that post this morning that we saw? There are more single people walking this planet than married people right now. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then if you layer on top of that the aging demographic and the fact that 50% of all marriages end in divorce, this topic is one that's not going away. But if we can approach it from a powerful position and bring people together that are like-minded and the same, it's we don't need to be solo agers. There's so many of us out there.
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, there's a data point that I discovered about a year ago, and it was a study actually sponsored by AARP, and that the American household today, the largest household today, is made up of single adults, not the nuclear family, which kind of blew me away. I was not aware of that. So, any other questions? I can sum things up if you want me to.
Yeah. And I think just, I mean, obviously people can go out and get the book and we'll provide the link and it's been in chat, but I think one of our last discussions, you actually had somebody that you were coaching through this process. People can reach out to you directly and you can and help them with these things, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that I'd love for you to take away today is don't put pressure on yourself. Don't think that you have to solve your issues straight away. And think of your plan or thinking about your plan. It's a living document. It's not set in stone, and you can always make changes and and adapt it to how you change as a person, because you're going to change. I've changed so much living where I do live. But thinking, the power of a plan really gives you the wherewithal to make adaptations and to pivot, because once you have a plan in place, you have now gained the skills of looking ahead, of changing your mindset from problem solving to possibility thinking. And that's the biggest takeaway, I think, is stop looking at the problems and start looking at possibilities.
Okay, and I opened Carol's mic. She said that she would like to make a statement here, but also somebody said we did a discussion on an utterance translation. It's translating people that are have Alzheimer's and what have you. And for the person that's asking me that, I actually have a meeting with Jose this afternoon. So we're going to get that discussion on soon. But Carol, thanks for your comments and contributing to the community. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I wanted to say, Carol, I've been doing this for a long time. My course to being where I am today has spanned probably 3 decades at least. So over the year, and I'm also an ethical vegan, and I tread very cautiously with that. Um, I'm making changes in my life that are getting me closer to what I need to be able to do. I bought Solo and Smart, but in terms of sharing with people about living this lifestyle, the resistance to it is enormous. I am in, it's not a designated 55 plus condominium, but that's basically what we are. And I'm on the sustainability committee. We've brought composting into the community,
Nice.
lots of opportunity, and even among the committee members. Well, I'm not, I still eat fish and I still eat this. I'm not going to give up my bacon. I mean, I've heard it so many times. And I've gotten to the point where I wait until somebody approaches me. I took this journey for the last, I started this part of it 10 years ago for losing weight, and it's become a health journey. I've lost 220 pounds and
Holy cow.
maintained that weight loss now for over 4
Nice.
years.
Nice.
So it isn't that I'm not out there. I am. I put myself out there to lots of people. The people who are interested, very sadly, are few and far between, particularly as we age and as it deals with health issues.
Man,
So
well,
I will keep doing what I'm doing.
absolutely. Keep it up, Carol. That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. And now that I opened up Carol's mic, I see that there's a few others. Let me open the mic for Karen and Eric. Whoops, Karen was inadvertently, she just lowered her hand, and Eric, his hand was raised. So if he wants to share a few statements as we wrap things up, while Carol was talking, though, one common thing that I hear, and uh, Carol Marak, you probably experienced this as well. Living in multifamily housing does require, there are benefits, but there are also some challenges. Smelling your neighbor's food in the hallway, loud noises if the walls aren't soundproofed, things of that nature that, it just, I don't know if there's a technique, but you really got to sort of pick your battles and figure out
Absolutely.
what areas you can um, approach. Let's
Yeah,
see,
know
Eric.
your priorities.
Yep, Eric, your mic is open. You had a question.
I thank you very much for this thing. And unfortunately, I'm a snowbird down in Florida and everything. So I go 6 months here and 6 months there. And it's hard to really get friends because I travel a lot. So I do the best I can. And also, I did want to ask my cousins for help because I am an expert in finance and everything, self-taught, investing and all that stuff. But when I took care of my father and he got Alzheimer's and my mother had cancer, I got scared blank. So I had to ask my cousin, who was an accountant, to help me. He puts me on a budget. I want to be on a budget. I want to be able to go on the cruise for a couple of months and everything will be just fine. But and also I wanted to buy a travel trailer and he turned me down because I like to explore things on the road because I hate hotel food. So he turned me down. I like to do my own cooking. I need a pleasure because of my cancer. So I
Yeah,
needed because I have I had oral cancer and everything, and chewing is very difficult. So everything has to be ball pieces and everything. But I thank you very much. Dennis Prager says I have to be grateful for any opportunity to learn something.
Good. Well, yeah, and thank you, Eric, and thanks for sharing. I mean, God, folks, when you come on a forum like this and you're sharing with other people, that takes a fair amount of bravery, but hopefully it's a good feeling to feel the support that you've got, and there's people out there that are willing to help. Let's see, Arlene, your hand was raised and you had a
Yes.
comment or a question? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, Carol, I'd like to thank you because this was very well organized in terms of your presentation. And I hope we can you can let us know how we can get the book. That's number one. Number two is it's always kind of a tentative feeling. I think someone else alluded to this as to whether or not you want to share personal information, and putting things in the chat sometimes makes that easier. As I said, I have one son who's in his 50s. I have decided at this point in time that I'm comfortable staying in my house, although it's a single family house. At 82, I do have some neighbors who kind of check on me and look after me. I have some friends in the neighborhood. I'm just not ready to go into a multi, independent living or whatever. Plus, they're extraordinarily expensive. They are $11,000 a month in this area. Often, since my older son is the one who really does more of the things for me, I do feel like I can be a burden to him. And I think probably one of the ways to alleviate that might be saying, at times I feel like I'm a burden. What do you think about saying that?
I think that's a great idea. Bring it out in the open, right? And talk about it.
Well, he's not great in wanting, I mean, I've got all my, my plans, my will and my power of attorney and all that stuff is in place.
Yes.
He doesn't want to talk about it. He says, Mom, you're being morbid. And I'm saying, no, I'm trying to prevent you from having to deal with it in an unknown situation. I mean, eventually I'd like to live another 20 years in a healthy way.
Right.
I'm just trying to save you from having to wonder what is going on and what my wishes are, because I know what my wishes are, and he is my executor because I do trust him to follow my wishes. Of course, I won't know when I'm gone, but I hope he will.
Out of curiosity, Arlene, were you a caregiver for a parent or an older loved one?
No, my mom died at 70, my dad at 58. I've just always been, I'm a retired speech language pathologist. So as in a health related field, and as part of that, I used to see people who were having these experiences. And I also come from a very close knit family. My mom was the oldest of 5, and I saw caregiving in that family. And I think I just wanted to avoid having it become a burden for my children.
So Bob just wrote in the Q&A, he asks, how do you define being a burden? And that's a really good question, Bob.
That is a good question.
And like, I know it's past 1, but we could probably do an hour on this, but I am curious, like, for your son, and sort of, let's say you have this crystal ball, define what, and maybe you don't need to do this now, but in a conversation with your son or writing it down, this is how I would define being a burden on you.
Well, I have a friend whose father just died at 97, and she became the executor of the estate. Often the girls in the family, the women in the family, are the ones that do these things more easily or more willingly. And when I saw what she was needing to do, it kind of brought home, gee, becoming an executor of an estate is a very time-consuming experience. In fact, I had one of my friends who, in the mail one day, I received this huge packet naming me the executor of their estate,
Ooh.
and they had not asked me if
Oh.
I was willing to take this on. And this was probably about 8, maybe 10 years ago, but certainly 8 years ago. And I was like taken quite aback by it. And I discussed it with a friend who's an attorney. And she said, first of all, it's a lot of legal issues. Do you want to do it? And I thought about it. And I said, no, I really don't. They have no children. And so what I ended up doing, they're in independent living. They told me it turned out to be assisted living. But I talked to the social worker there, and she said, don't worry about it, I'll handle it. And I finally did say to my friend, who the woman of the couple, you know, Norm sent this out and you both hadn't asked me. And she said, oh, he told me he had asked you and you said it was okay. So whether this was purposeful forgetting or he didn't want to deal with it, I don't know. And to this day, I've never pushed it beyond that. But it was such a shock when I got this huge packet in the mail. And so that kind of has started me thinking on, having 2 sons. One is often works and lives out of the country for the last 20 years. The other one really kind of everything falls to him. And that's kind of more of what I think of as my being, quote, a burden, because he's the only one that is around and lives close by.
Man.
There's a wonderful resource, especially for legal matters and thinking through these conversations that you're talking about, Arlene. And it's the American Bar Association. If you go to their website, which is
ABA.
American Bar Association, just Google it. And then go to the section where it's consumers and then older adults. And they have a lot of different resources for people to help them think through these legal issues. Another recommendation, in order just to kind of to wrap your head around it, is case managers, and they used to be called geriatric care managers, as well as patient advocates. They really have a lot of experience on these types of conversations with family members, how to talk about aging with your offspring. There are a lot of resources that are available to us on, in the healthcare industry.
Something about a project. There's something called
Conversation Project.
Yep.
They're wonderful.
And because now we're really burning up the time.
Okay.
But I want to close on Arlene. This is a comment while you were talking. It says, "Oh my God, we need parents like you. That's what I'm learning by observing, living with my parents' mess. I'm adapting to the next stage of life plans so as not to leave my adult children with what I've had to inherit." And yes, it's a choice, but not as much of a choice when no one else can step up. So hats off to you, Arlene, for thinking about this. And thanks a lot. Okay, and then I know a few other questions came in, but let's wrap this up. And so, Carol, thanks again. Anything you want the audience to know that you didn't get a chance to say?
Just start planning now, thinking ahead right now before you have an event or an emergency.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, recording will be up this afternoon. Thanks again, Carol, and we'll see you all at the next one.
Thank you.